It's not terribly surprising that Sam arrived at this conclusion. He knows his master. Sam realizes why Frodo doesn't want to be seen right now. Something scared him into action. At this point, it doesn't truly matter to Sam what that was, just that Frodo has decided to go off immediately. And this I call Sam's smarter not harder moment. Hello everybody, welcome to Aude and Tulava, where we are walking our way through Tolkien's Legendarium. Today we're finishing up book 2 with part 2 of chapter 10, The Breaking of the Fellowship. So don't forget, like and subscribe. I have a few of kind of my must-have books linked in the description below if you'd like to help support the channel. Memberships are open as well if you'd like to support us that way. All right, let's dive in. As Frodo passes down the hill from Amon Hen, less than a rustle in the wind, the rest of the company was searching for him. But the paragraph after we ended the last video takes us back to a time about an hour or so ago. Frodo had just left and they're basically killing time. The others remained long by the riverside. For some time they had been silent, moving restlessly about, but now they were sitting in a circle and they were talking. Every now and again they made efforts to speak of other things, of their long road and many adventures. They questioned Aragorn concerning the realm of Gondor and its ancient history, and the remnants of its great works that could still be seen in this strange borderland of the Amon Wheel, the Stone Kings and the seats of Law and Hen, and the great stair beside the falls of Rauras. But always their thoughts and words strayed back to Frodo and the ring. What would Frodo choose to do? Why was he hesitating? Now I see this whole conversation kind of like small talk with a family that doesn't really get along too well. I know the company gets along pretty well, but kind of hear me out. They all know about the elephant in the room. With many family, let's just say, hypothetically, it's politics. And they know the conversation could go downhill really quickly if they started down that road. So they all just keep trying to think of other things to talk about. Hey, you remember when you hear me eat that goldfish? Or remember when you tried to say butternut squash and it ended up saying squatter nut bosh? A little Friends reference if you're one of them. And I'd liken them asking Aragorn about the Amon Wheel and Stone Kings and everything to asking Uncle Corey about his job and wondering what exactly is a Tolkien professor, you know, that kind of thing. But eventually someone, though in the analogy it's usually someone trying to start something, makes a comment about the president and someone else takes umbrage and fiery discussion begins. It's not a perfect analogy, but it works at least in my head. They just end up going back to Frodo and what he's going to do and why he's hesitating. Aragorn brings some perspective to the conversation. He's debating which course is the most desperate, I think, said Aragorn. And well he may. It is now more hopeless than ever for the company to go east, since we have been tracked by Gollum, and must fear that the secret of our journey is already betrayed. But Minas Tirith is no nearer to the fire and the destruction of the burden. We may remain there for a little while and make a brave stand, but the Lord Denethor and all his men cannot hope to do what even Elrond said was beyond his power, either to keep the burden secret or to hold off the full might of the enemy when he comes to take it. Which way would any of us choose in Frodo's place? I do not know. Now indeed, we miss Gandalf the most. And this is one of the very few times, if any, we see Aragorn be simply wrong. We know this because in the last video, up here, Frodo told Boromir he knew what he needed to do, he just couldn't bring himself to do it. And though Aragorn is wrong, he brings up all the points that we did earlier. Minas Tirith isn't any closer to Mordor. Do you think Denethor could do what Elrond said he couldn't do? It's pretty clear they're all bad choices, and on top of that, Gandalf is dead. And Aragorn now must stay with Frodo whichever way he chooses to go. And here we really see Aragorn missing Gandalf. He said so in the previous chapter, but we see more clearly the choices Aragorn is faced with are exactly the opposite of what he wants to do. Even what was foretold about him. How can he be the Elisar when he's slinking through the Amon Wheel on his way to Mordor? There's no way. The conversation develops and Legolas says he would vote to go to Minas Tirith. Gimli actually has a really great response. And so should I, said Gimli. We, of course, were only sent to help the bearer along the road, to go no further than we wished, and none of us is under any oath or command to seek Mount Doom. Hard was my parting from Lothlorien, yet I have come so far, and I say this. Now we have reached the last choice. It is clear to me that I cannot leave Frodo. I would choose Minas Tirith, but if he does not, then I follow him. And I too will go with him, said Legolas. It would be faithless now to say farewell. Now I really love this response from Gimli, and it really takes me kind of on an emotional journey in just a couple sentences. Gimli starts explaining they were, only there to help Frodo along and were under no oath to go to Mount Doom. I'm immediately brought back to his conversation with Elrond at the beginning of The Ring Goes South. They go back and forth, Elrond reinforcing the idea that they don't need to go any further than they wish, and Gimli firing right back saying, faithless is the friend who doesn't stick to his word, paraphrasing. And I could feel myself getting frustrated with Gimli as I was going through it this time. Was he gonna go back on everything he said to Elrond? How could he? But he changes his tune. His parting from Lorien was grievous to him, and he has gone through much in his travels since Rivendell. And in all of that pain, he knows he can't do anything but keep going. Even if Frodo chooses to go where Gimli doesn't want to go. And I love it. Legolas jumping in and saying he would go too is fine, but Gimli's little speech it's really heartwarming. Of course, Aragorn just has to think of the entire company and not just his own choice. He's the de facto leader after all. It would indeed be a betrayal if we all left him, said Aragorn. But if he goes east, then all need not go with him, nor do I think that all should. That venture is desperate, as much so for 8 as for 3 or 2, or 1 alone. If you would let me choose, then I should appoint 3 companions. Sam, who could not bear it otherwise, and Gimli, and myself. Boromir will return to his own city, where his father and his people need him, and with him the others should go, or at least Meriadoc and Peregrine, if Legolas is not willing to leave us. Well, that won't do at all, cried Merry. We can't leave Frodo. Pippin and I always intended to go wherever he went, and we still do. But we did not realize what that would mean. It seemed different so far away in the Shire or in Rivendell. It would be mad and cruel to let Frodo go to Mordor. Why can't we stop him? And we must stop him, said Pippin. And that is what he is worrying about, I'm sure. He knows we shan't agree to his going east, and he doesn't like to ask anyone to go with him, poor old fellow. Imagine it, going off to Mordor alone. Pippin shuddered. But the dear silly old hobbit, he ought to know that he hasn't got to ask. He ought to know that if we can't stop him, we shan't leave him. Now, Aragorn's splitting up of the teams here is kind of interesting. At least he recognizes that Sam would never, let Frodo go by himself, something Frodo should have thought of, we'll see in a few minutes. But he seems to almost backpedal, saying, Merry and Pippin and Legolas should go to Minas Tirith and Boromir, unless you don't want to, Legolas? I don't know. But the hobbits are they're definitely going. He really just kind of gives everybody a choice except for Merry and Pippin. I know they're the youngest ones in the group, but it's still just kind of odd. But Merry and Pippin's response is honestly pretty predictable unless you haven't been paying attention. Just like in Rivendell, they're going with Frodo. But instead of just wanting to go with Frodo, they take it one step further. They're going to stop Frodo from going, which starts to really open up the differences between those two and Sam. Pippin doesn't say that if they can't stop him, Frodo should know they won't leave him. And Sam will hint at this, but that's exactly why Frodo is having such a hard time. We saw it way back in chapter 3 of book 1, which I've brought up multiple times in the last few videos. Frodo doesn't want to drag others into danger, and as we saw in the last video, it's the whole reason he puts on the ring and heads back to the boat when he hears the rest of the company calling after him, and Sam knows this. Begging your pardon, said Sam, I don't think you understand my master at all. He isn't hesitating about which way to go. Of course not. What's the good of Minas Tirith anyway? He knows he's got to find the cracks of doom if he can, but he's afraid. Now it comes to the point he's just plain terrified. That's what his trouble is. Of course, he's had a bit of schooling, so to speak, we all have, since we left home, or he'd be so terrified he'd just fling the ring into the river and bolt. But he's still too frightened to start, and he isn't worrying about us either, whether we'll go along with him or no. He knows we mean to, and that's another thing that's bothering him. If he screws himself up to go, he'll want to go alone. Mark my words, we're going to have trouble when he comes back, for he'll screw himself up all right, as sure as his name's Baggins. So basically what I'm hearing from Sam here is almost exactly the same thing Frodo was telling Boromir, why he was having such a hard time coming to the decision. This also plays right into what Aragorn was saying, that Sam should go with Frodo because he would never be separated from him. And even if I didn't know what was going to happen in the next few pages, I would totally agree. Sam needs to be with Frodo. Someone who knows him that well needs to be with him. Now, in the middle of Sam putting in his spoke, he realizes Boromir was missing. As Aragorn realizes Frodo has had his allotted time to deliberate, Boromir then reappears. At that moment, Boromir reappeared. He came out from the trees and walked towards them without speaking. His face looked grim and sad. He paused as if counting those that were present and then sat down aloof with his eyes on the ground. Where have you been, Boromir? Asked Aragorn. Have you seen Frodo? Boromir hesitated for a second. Yes and no, he answered slowly. Yes, I found him some way up the hill and I spoke to him. I urged him to come to Minas Tirith and not to go east. I grew angry and he left me. He vanished. I've never seen such a thing happen before, though I've heard of it in tales. He must have put the ring on. I could not find him again. I thought he would return to you. Is that all that you have to say? Said Aragorn, looking hard and not too kindly at Boromir. Yes, he answered. I will say no more yet. Now, Boromir obviously put a pretty light spin on the story. He grew more angry at Frodo than what he said. And it seems that Aragorn knows this too. I think Aragorn believed what Sam said about Boromir. When Sam noticed him missing, he said he'd been a bit queer lately. And though Aragorn has had a lot on his mind, I bet he still noticed, just maybe not with as much, let's say, prejudice as Sam did. But we can see he has his suspicions as he was looking hard and not too kindly at Boromir. Now, I still don't know what to make entirely of Boromir's response, though. Maybe, I don't know, if you guys could help me out in the comments, why does Boromir not want to talk about his interaction with Frodo yet? My best theory are he's just embarrassed. Maybe needs a little, few minutes before he can face it. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about it in front of everyone else and only wants to talk to Aragorn. Or maybe he still just doesn't understand what happened and just needs to process it, kind of understand what he did. So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you agree with one of my theories or if you have your own. But once they realize Frodo disappeared an hour ago, everyone basically freaks out. Gimli and Legolas were just running, and the other hobbits started running and calling for Frodo. Aragorn realizes what's happening here. A sudden panic or madness seemed to have fallen on the company. "We shall all be scattered and lost," groaned Aragorn. "Boromir, I do not know what part you have played in this mischief, but help now. Go after those two young hobbits and guard them at the least, even if you cannot find Frodo. Come back to this spot if you find him or any traces of him. I shall return soon." Hammond and Skull actually make a really interesting point here. As much as we talk about fate, this is pretty fitting. Regarding the specific line of a sudden panic or madness seemed to have fallen on the company, madness or fate setting them on their separate appointed paths. At this point, I'm clearly assuming you've read the whole book before. If not, spoilers, sorry. But each mini-group is now on a path to make massive waves in the fate of Middle-earth. Sam and Frodo off to Mordor, Merry and Pippin to Fangorn to rouse the Ents, then separately to take part in killing the Witch King and saving Faramir, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli to Helm's Deep, and then passing through the paths of the dead, and Aragorn summoning the Oathbreakers. And that's something I never really noticed or caught before. Yes, I knew this was the turning point where everyone starts to go their own way, but it never hit me that this was fate, or maybe Eru himself causing a madness throughout the company to make sure that they all ran after Frodo. So, he and Sam could go their own way and everything else could fall out the way it did. So now we come to what I kind of like to think of as the last scene. Aragorn runs after Sam and passes him on the way to find Frodo. "Come with me, Sam," he said. "None of us should be alone. There's mischief about. I feel it. I'm going to the top, to the seat of Amon Hen to see what may be seen. And look, it is as my heart guessed. Frodo went this way. Follow me and keep your eyes open." He sped up the path. Sam did his best, but he could not keep up with Strider the Ranger and soon fell behind. He had not gone far before Aragorn was out of sight ahead. Sam stopped and puffed. Suddenly he clapped his hand to a head. "Whoa, Sam Gamgee," he said aloud. "Your legs are too short, so use your head. Let me see now. Boromir isn't lying. That's not his way. But he hasn't told us everything. Something scared Mr. Frodo badly. He screwed himself up to the point sudden. He made up his mind at last to go. Where to? Off east. Not without Sam. Yes, without even his Sam. That's hard, cruel hard." Sam passed his hand over his eyes, brushing away the tears. "Steady, Gamgee," he said. "Think if you can. He can't fly across rivers and he can't jump waterfalls. He's got no gear, so he's got to get back to the boats. Back to the boats, back to the boats, Sam, like lightning." It's not terribly surprising that Sam arrived at this conclusion. He knows his master. Sam realizes why Frodo doesn't want to be seen right now. Something scared him into action. At this point, it doesn't truly matter to Sam what that was, just that Frodo has decided to go off immediately. And this I call Sam's smarter not harder moment. Sam decides he needs to go back to the boats so Frodo doesn't go off on his own. He turns right around, and as he arrives at Parthgalen, he sees a boat sliding out into the water all by itself. "Coming, Mr. Frodo, coming," called Sam and flung himself from the bank, clutching at the departing boat. He missed it by a yard. With a cry and a splash, he fell face downward into deep, swift water. Gurgling, he went under and the river closed over his curly head. An exclamation of dismay came from the empty boat. A paddle swirled and the boat put about. Frodo was just in time to grasp Sam by the hair as he came up, bubbling and struggling. Fear was staring in his round, brown eyes. So, bless Sam here. He just flings himself with the boat. I imagine it ends up kind of big belly flop, like a foot short, or I guess a yard. Side note, I love this description way better than the movies. No discussion as the boat kind of slips away, no slow wading into the water, just a dive into the water and an exclamation from Frodo. This feels more visceral to me, more urgent. No one has time to think. Sam just takes a run after his master to keep him safe. And it's not just him agreeing to go into peril, it's throwing himself without thinking into immediate peril. I can imagine it was something possibly seen by Tolkien at the Battle of the Sound. Maybe he saw a hapless soldier throw himself in front of the enemy guns to save his friend from that horrible death. Of course, Sam pulls Frodo out and they have really an amazing back and forth. "Of all the confounded nuisances, you are the worst, Sam," he said. "Oh, Mr. Frodo, that's hard," said Sam, shivering. "That's hard, trying to go without me and all. If I hadn't guessed right, where would you be now?" "Safely on my way." "Safely," said Sam, "all alone and without me to help you? I couldn't have borne it. It had been the death of me." "It would be the death of you to come with me, Sam," said Frodo. "And I could not have borne that. Not as certain of being left behind," said Sam. "But I am going to Mordor." "I know that well enough, Mr. Frodo. Of course you are, and I'm coming with you." "No, Sam," said Frodo, "don't hinder me. The others will be coming back at any minute. If they catch me here, I shall have to argue and explain, and I shall never have the heart or the chance to get off. But I must go at once. It's the only way." "Of course it is," answered Sam, "but not alone. I'm coming too. Or neither of us isn't going. I'll knock holes in all the boats first." Frodo actually laughed. A sudden warmth and gladness touched his heart. "Leave one," he said. "We'll need it. But you can't come like this, without your gear, food, or anything." And honestly, I don't even know what to say about this section. Frodo doesn't want anyone to come with him because he's scared they'll get hurt or die, or, he can't handle that. The best part about all of this is Sam knows what he's doing. I mean, neither of them really know what's in store for them during the journey. I'm sure Sam knows less about it even than Frodo does. But that's also the beauty of it. The fear of the unknown is often worse than the fear of the known. Sam knows he doesn't know, but he loves Frodo. He's going with him, fear or no fear. So Sam goes and gets all his stuff, and he and Frodo get in the boat. So Frodo and Sam set off on the last stage of the quest together. Frodo paddled away from the shore, and the river bore them swiftly away down the western arm and past the frowning cliffs of Tol Brandir. The roar of the great falls drew nearer. Even with such help as Sam could give, it was hard work to pass across the current at the southward end of the island and drive the boat eastward towards the far shore. At length, they came to land again upon the southern slopes of Amon Law. There they found a shelving shore, and they drew the boat out high above the water and hid it as well as they could behind a great boulder. Then, shouldering their burdens, they set off, seeking a path that would bring them over the gray hills of the Amon Wheel and down into the land of shadow. And that's a perfect place to finish up this chapter. And it brings us to the end of Book 2, the second half of the Fellowship of the Ring. I just want to say, I really appreciate you all watching this labor of love. I'm having, honestly, a phenomenally great time going through this book with a fine-tooth comb. And getting extra insights from all of you is amazing as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Channel memberships, again, are open as well. And until next time, always remember, out into the light, day shall come again.